the BBC has launched a blistering but secret attack on Nigel Farage. This is exactly the same as something we talked about previously with the House of Lords Appointment Commission. Everybody now is preparing for a Nigel Farage government. This video isn't endorsing Nigel Farage. I know some of you like Ben Habib. I know some of you like Rupert Lowe. I know some of you like Nick Tanconi. This is more about the way that all of these quangos, including the BBC, are now battering down the hatches and preparing themselves for the day when there is a new government, a patriotic government, to ensure that they continue to survive and the new government cannot reform them. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this important video. It relates to the future of this country, so please do circulate it, but also please do consider a small donation to the Patriot Fund. The link is below. Okay, so we know that for 14 years the Conservatives really did very little. I will admit to being partly responsible for that. In 2010 I came in as a senior parliamentary assistant to a new Member of Parliament, think Chief of Staff. It's not really Chief of Staff because you're not the boss of other people, but you're the most senior official in the office of a Member of Parliament. When we came in, we thought it was all to do with the profligate spending of Gordon Brown. Remember Gordon Brown's economic theory? It's called the perpetual boom theory, or at least I call it that. What he believed was if you take an economic boom and borrow money and stoke up public sector spending during that economic boom, you can create a perpetual boom that will go on forever. Of course, that's not true. Gordon Brown didn't abolish boom and bust economics. What he did was he just ensured that when the boom was over, the bust was much more serious than it would have been otherwise, because there was no money left in the till, as Liam Byrne quite rightly points out as Chief Secretary to the Treasury. So, to be fair, we didn't realise in 2010 that the number one political issue was not the way that Gordon Brown had wasted all of his money, all of our money rather. The issue was about the constitutional changes of Tony Blair. And if I'm going to be generous to David Cameron, and I think only to David Cameron, I think by the time that David Cameron realised the constitutional vandalism and the effect it had had on this country, I think it was probably too late to fix it. Obviously, he couldn't have done it under the Lib Dems anyway, but remember, he was Prime Minister on his own, albeit for a brief period of time, certainly long enough for a Great Repeal Act. So, all of these quangos have survived 14 years of Conservative government. Will they survive 14 years of a reform government, or a whatever Ben Habib's party's called? Is it Resolve, Regain, or it's not neither of those. But okay, will it survive that? Well, there's good news for the BBC. The Royal Charter, it expires in 2027. That is the governing document of the BBC. Now, the Conservative government should have renewed it by making significant changes to the way the BBC operates, but they didn't. They kicked the can down the road, and the reason they kicked the can down the road was they knew that Labour would give the BBC whatever they wanted, and of course the Conservatives wanted to let the BBC off the hook as well, but they couldn't get away with it, and therefore they wanted to come up with this Royal Charter during the period of the Labour government. Now, the Labour government started in 2024. It's stone dead now. Keir Starmer's premiership is over. He can't achieve anything at all. Have you seen what they've done with the economy? All this lies about income tax, and it's just an absolute shambles. But they will cling on to power for the full 4 or 5 year term, depending on what they choose to do. That means that they will have the ability to renew the BBC's charter. And the BBC is pushing hard to ensure that Farage is ignored in his views on the BBC, the British public are ignored, and then they'll give them a big long charter to make sure that they are protected. And the hope will be that Farage's government will have disappeared. Farage may have died, and I'm not saying he's ill, but may have died by the time the charter expires, and so that protects them. And the reason I mentioned the House of Lords at the beginning of all this is that the House of Lords was attempting to do the same thing with HOLAC, the House of Lords Appointment Commission. House of Lords Appointment Commission looks at the appointments of peerages by the Prime Minister. They attempted to stop Boris Johnson appointing Yevgeny Lebedev who is the owner of the Independent and the Evening Standard. They tried to stop him on the grounds he was Russian. And his dad was in the KGB. Although, to be fair, all of the oligarchs' dads were in the KGB. It's just one of those things. And I think it's slightly unfair to judge Yevgeny by the fact that his dad was a billionaire oligarch KGB, because that's what they all are. But anyway, I slightly digress. But Holak was trying to take power so that it would appoint to the House of Lords. That would mean that Nigel Farage would be the first Prime Minister in history who wasn't able to command a majority in the House of Lords and wasn't able to appoint anyone to the House of Lords either. That is in order to protect the institution of the House of Lords from the democracy that Nigel Farage would attempt to spread to it. So we saw that. Now with the Royal Charter as well, what you will see from now on is institution after institution starting to make their provisions for how they will remain unreformed should Nigel Farage become Prime Minister. And why is this important? Well, the reason it's important is this. You and I can moan all day about the National Trust, but fundamentally it's a peripheral body that manages assets which were stolen from their owners as a result of inheritance tax. But I can live with that, right? I don't like them, but I can live with it. When you get to things like Natural England, when you get to things like the College of Policing, when you get to things like the BBC, when you get to things like the House of Lords, these are bodies that discharge significant powers within our system. They have been designed to be immune to the political will of the people, and they're now trying to protect themselves so that can't be dragged back. There is the idea of the Great Repeal Act. And why is that Great Repeal Act there? Because the central view of most people on the right now is that the rot is so imbued in everything we do that actually just unpicking it slightly is going to be impossible. You have to go for a great reset. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. And so that is the issue. Now, I am telling you something. Will Nigel Farage be a good Prime Minister? Will Rupert Lowe be a good Prime Minister? Will Ben Habib be a good Prime Minister? Will Nick Tanconi be a good Prime Minister? I don't know. But I will tell you what the critical issue will be. Can they take control of the levers of power quickly? Now, the big problem is when you pull a lever of power as the Prime Minister nowadays, you will find it unattached to anything. You know, you have to start negotiating with Natural England over the building of houses. You have to beg the College of Policing to abide by the law when it comes to non-crime hate incidents. The House of Lords Appointment Commission, which is not empowered to overrule the Prime Minister, attempted to overrule the Prime Minister by going directly to the Sovereign. You need to take control of all of these institutions, and the BBC is amongst them, because when we say the BBC has made the odd mistake, let's just remember, every single mistake goes in the same direction. They always accidentally defame Donald Trump, or accidentally defame Israel, or accidentally defame the EDL, or accidentally defame Tommy Robinson. They've not accidentally defamed, what's her name, Geeta Chakrabarti, or whatever her name is. Her name's not Geeta. But they've never done that. They've never accidentally slagged off Palestine Action. They haven't even called Hamas terrorists, or at least they didn't want to. It always goes the same way. It's always Farage, it's always Robinson, it's always Trump, it's always the Unite the Kingdom March or the EDL or football fans. It's always going in one direction. And that tells you of an institutional bias and an institutional corruption that Nigel Farage or whoever will attempt to get rid of. But that Royal Charter, its renewal in 2027 is a major blow to Nigel Farage because it makes things more difficult. Now, here is some good news. Primary legislation can deal with it. You can simply change the law to say there's going to be a new Royal Commission. It could be one sentence. A bill to create a Royal Commission for the BBC. It says, this bill creates a Royal Commission for the BBC. Boom. Put it through the House of Commons, House of Lords, gets a King's Assent. You could probably do it in about 20 minutes. But you wouldn't need to do that. And at the moment, remember, these things stack up because Farage hasn't got a majority. Sorry, I was about to say Nigel Farage hasn't got a majority in the House of Lords. Nigel Farage has got no members of the House of Lords. As it stands, zero. There's what, 900 members of the House of Lords and not one single reform, not one single Rupert Lowe supporter, not one single Ben Habib supporter, not one single Nick Tanconi supporter, not one single Tommy Robinson supporter. Absolutely none of them at all are in that place. And that is the problem that we've got. We're going to keep an eye on this channel, but you watch Natural England, you watch the Green Committees, you watch the BBC, you watch the House of Lords, you watch all of these institutions stop themselves from being changed back to what they should be, which is serving the country rather than serving themselves. Because I'm going to say one final thing to explain what the problem is. We are no longer a government of democracy. We are now officially a government of experts, but that's not real. They're not experts, they're extremists. People who sit on climate committees are obsessed with climate change. People who join the English-speaking union are obsessed with debate, though that's not part of government. But you see my point? If you are on the bowling club committee, it's because you're obsessed with bowling. Nothing wrong with that. But when you are attempting to balance out running a sensible country, having a series of committees dominated by people who are just extremists in their own field destroys everything. And that's what we need to take back control of, and that's what our problem is. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do forward this around, and please do donate to Patriot Club. Until next time, goodbye.